rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then shall the end come.
Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?
Good afternoon, everybody. I want to welcome you to End of the Age, Thursday's edition. Get my days mixed up here. Irvin's got me on the radio quite a bit lately. I'm Dave Robbins with End Time Ministries, and I want to thank you for joining me today. Irvin is in Israel, and they just had a great service over there, and they signed up 54 people on our tour group to be baptized in the Jordan River. And so we're very thankful for that. It was a great time, a great service, and so they're having a wonderful time in Israel on our tour. And if you'd like to join us on our tour in the spring, Irvin and myself will both be there along with my wife and his wife, and we'll be going to Jerusalem and then to Israel, and then we'll be going to Rome as well. And I know that they've already got a lot of people interested in going in the spring, so if you'd like to join us on the tour, we do baptisms like this every year in the Jordan River. It's my highlight of the trip, actually. So if you'd like to join us in the spring, Jana and Holly will be back in the office on Tuesday of next week. So if you want to call them and talk to them about the tour, it'd be a great time. Now, we talk about all kinds of different subjects on End of the Age. All the different prophecies in the Bible, all the different current events, what's going on. But I get calls all the time and questions saying, Dave, what are the three ribs in the mouth of the bear mentioned in Daniel 7:5? Well, we've speculated over the years, and today I'm going to give you both scenarios of what we think it might be, and then I'll let you decide for yourself, but I'll let you know why we think these two different scenarios of what the ribs in the mouth of the bear might be. So on today's program, I'm going to discuss the possible identity of the three ribs in the mouth of the bear mentioned in Daniel 7:5. But we got to start from Daniel chapter 7 and explain to you what I'm talking about, because I know we're getting new audiences all the time. And a lot of people don't have a clue when I would say, hey, the three ribs in the mouth of the bear. To some people, that's completely foreign. What are you talking about, Dave? So I'm going to go back to Daniel 7, and I'm going to explain what I'm talking about, and then we'll get into the two scenarios, who we think these three ribs might be. And we're speculating. At this point, we don't know for sure, but I'm going to let you know why we think it might be these two different scenarios, because I get the question all the time. And so we're going to start at Daniel chapter 7, verses 1 through 7. And let me read through here Daniel's vision that was given to him by God, and then we'll explain what it means, and then I'll get into the two scenarios. It's really interesting to study it. So Daniel 7, verses 1 through 7 states this: In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream, and he told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea. And four great beasts came up out of the sea, diverse one from another. The first was like a lion, and it had eagle's wings. And I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man. And a man's heart was given to it. And then in verse 5 it says, And behold, another beast, a second like to a bear. And it raised up itself on one side, and it had three ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, Arise and devour much flesh. After this I beheld, and this is still Daniel giving his vision. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it four wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, so there's a 4-headed leopard, and dominion was given to the leopard. Verse 7 states, "After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns." Now, that's the vision of Daniel of the 4 different beasts, the lion with eagle's wings, the bear, the 4-headed leopard, and the 10-horned beast. But I want to focus today, I want to focus your attention on just part of verse 5. Verse 5 states, "And behold, another beast, a second like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side," and then it makes a very key statement, "and it had 3 ribs in the mouth between the teeth of it, and they said thus unto it, Arise and devour much flesh." So remember the key phrase, "and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth of it." Well, we have speculated for years that the ribs could be one of 2 different scenarios. So let's discuss the possible identity of these 3 ribs in the mouth of the bear. But first, we need to determine who are these nations, who are these beasts, what are these beasts? What do they represent? And they represent nations. And when will these nations exist? Because if these were things that existed 2,000 years ago, they don't really apply to you and I. But if we can determine that if they're going to exist in existence on the earth now, then it lets us know that, hey, we truly are in the end time. And then the prophecy of these 3 ribs, we really need to understand what they are, or at least be able to really closely speculate so in the next few years we can figure it out. So the question is, the first question, when will these nations exist? Well, is that an answerable question? Can we tell from the Scriptures when these nations will exist? Well, in Daniel chapter 7, verse 4 through 8, like I just read, it identifies 4 beasts. Then in Daniel 7:9, it says, "I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit." So the thrones of these nations, they were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit. Well, this is describing the transition from the kingdom of human government. Remember, there's going to be a world government set up just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. This is describing the transition from that human government to the kingdom of God when the Lord will come back and set up His kingdom here on earth. Well, the Bible teaches when Jesus Christ returns to the earth, He will remove all human governments and He will establish His kingdom on earth, which will never pass away and never be destroyed. Well, here Daniel sees these beasts with their thrones cast down and Jesus Christ crowned as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So it is at this time when the 1,000-year reign of Jesus Christ will begin. It's just after the second coming of Jesus Christ is when the 1,000-year reign will begin. This is what Scripture refers to as the kingdom of God. Well, these nations, we know from these Scriptures, will be in existence when Jesus returns to set up His kingdom here on earth. So they are going to be here while you and I are here on earth. Now, can we identify the nations? Well, absolutely. The lion, who was the lion? Well, the lion, obviously there's a nation in existence today whose recognized animal symbol is the lion. It's the nation of Great Britain. The lion has been symbolized on Great Britain flags, and in Webster's Third New International Dictionary defines lion as the symbol of Great Britain. So we know that when Daniel saw a vision of a lion, he was seeing a symbolic view of a future nation, which would be Great Britain, 2,500 years ago. And then remember in verse 5, he saw a bear with 3 ribs in the mouth of it. Well, the bear, obviously, it's easily proven is Russia. It's commonly associated with the bear animal symbol. You can look it up on Google, the Russian bear. There's hundreds and hundreds of articles on the Russian bear. Everybody, that's one of the easiest ways we can prove these Scriptures is when you tell people there's a nation going to be on the earth just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ, and it's going to be symbolized as the bear. Almost everybody I've ever talked to would say, well, that's Russia. because it's very recognizable in the world today. The eagle, obviously, if you notice, the eagle's wings were plucked from the lion, which was Great Britain. The eagle symbolizes the United States of America. It's our nation's national bird. The reverse side of the United States on the $1 bill, it pictures the eagle as their national seal. The United States was birthed from Great Britain, and 2,300 years after this scripture was written, America declared her independence from Great Britain. So Daniel 4 continues, and it states, I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth. So this illustrates, obviously, that the United States breaking away from Great Britain, and it appears as if Daniel prophesied about the Declaration of Independence all the way back in 550 BC, the breaking away of the eagle's wings, or of America, from Great Britain. So that's the United States. The leopard, Daniel 7:6 states, after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl, and the beast also had 4 heads. So we're looking at, Daniel sees a vision of a 4-headed leopard, and obviously the leopard in prophecy always symbolizes the nation of Germany. How do we know? Well, verse 6 says that dominion was given to the leopard. Which nation has had dominion in the world over the last 150 years? Well, it can't be the eagle's wings mentioned in Daniel 7, because that's the United States. It can't refer to Russia, because she has the symbol of the bear. So there is a nation on earth that has started the last 3 major wars, the Franco-German War of 1870, World War I, and World War II. The nation is Germany. Germany has dominated world events in modern times. And furthermore, in Webster's online dictionary with multilingual thesaurus translations, it states the leopard is also the unofficial national animal of Germany, replacing the tiger, which was along with the eagle, the national animal of Nazi Germany. They're trying to get away from those symbols. So the leopard, also the leopard tank, the number 1 tank in the world, was a German-designed tank, and it entered into service in 1965. So the leopard is Germany, the 4-headed leopard. And we've got more proof for that. So then we come to the beast with 10 horns. In Daniel 7:7, the last empire that will rule the world upon the earth, just before the second coming of Jesus Christ, is depicted as a beast with 10 horns. The passage states that the 10 horns symbolize 10 kings that will be in alliance together, and the 10 horns in this prophecy represent the same 10 kings that are symbolized by the 10 toes of iron mingled with clay in Daniel chapter 2. Well, if you notice in Daniel 2:44, it says about the final 10 kings that they were depicted by the 10 toes. And it says, and in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom. It's the same prophecy, which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall never be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces, consume all of the human kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. So you say, well, in the days of what kings? What 10 kings is this referring to? Well, the 10 kings represented by the 10 toes of iron mingled with clay in Daniel 2 is the same kings represented by the 10 horns in Daniel 7. So this lets us know that the 10 toes, which represent a reborn Holy Roman Empire in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, are the same as the 10 horns in Daniel 7 in Daniel's vision. So, having said all that, again, I want to focus your attention today on verse 5. And verse 5 states, and behold another beast, a second like to a bear. Now that we know who all these beasts represent, the second one was a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said, thus arise unto it, arise and devour much flesh. Now remember, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. So, Irvin, myself, we've all speculated for years, and I use the word speculate because at this point we don't know 100%. But if you understand history, if you understand the nations and different things that have gone on in that part of the world over the last 100, 150 years, you kind of get the idea of what we're talking about as I go through these next two scenarios. So we've speculated for years that the ribs could be one of two of these different scenarios. So let's discuss the possible identity of the three ribs in the mouth of the bear. And if you call me and say, I've had these calls all for years, Dave, what's the three ribs mean? We know the identity of the bear, it's Russia. What's the three ribs in the mouth? These are the answers that I'm going to give you, because it's very important that you understand kind of what's going on, and you need to understand history and why I would give you these answers. So the first scenario is this. It would be the China nations of Manchuria, Mongolia, and Xinjiang. Why do I say that? Well, if you notice that the bear, it says that it raised itself up on one side. Now we're talking about Russia. Russia has always moved in aggression against the nations on the one side of her. For 50 years after World War II, she controlled East Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, and Albania. So the bear is also shown having three ribs in the mouth of it. So we understand who the bear is. That's a given. We got that. But what's the three ribs? Well, at this point, like I said, we can only speculate, but follow my train of thought here. For years, we thought the ribs might represent Manchuria, Mongolia, and Xinjiang, the three huge provinces which Russia took from China by means of 19th century treaties. Well, since China feels that these treaties were imposed upon her unjustly, these three land areas have become bones of contention between Russia and China for years. Well, many armed flare-ups have occurred in these areas in recent years, and it is now feared that these border disputes can someday ignite an all-out war between the two giants. However, if you notice what has been going on the world stage lately, just within the last 3 to 5 years, Russia and China, they seem to kind of be aligning with each other, and for several reasons. So let's talk about that. Why would Russia and China align with each other? Well, Russia and China, this is an article that is from Sputnik. It says Russia and China and the independent allies are forming a new alliance in opposition to the U.S. Now, this article is from over the last week or so. It states that one of the most important reactions by Russia aimed at reducing the effects of Western sanctions upon them and strengthening the country's economy has been the expansion of cooperation with China. Russia is one of China's biggest energy suppliers. In October of 2014, Russia's central bank and the People's Bank of China made an agreement to enable bilateral currency swap deals in the Russian ruble and the Chinese yuan in order to stimulate bilateral trade and direct investment between the two countries. So once you align financially, then everything else kind of seems to fall into line here. So Russia and China have also increased their defense cooperation. I mean, who would want to fight Russia and China at the same time? Nobody on earth. The United States wouldn't. And as they share joint concerns, they're increasing their defense cooperation because they share joint concerns over the activities of the U.S. in the Far East and in Europe. You understand what's going on? And I'm fixing to talk about it here in a second. The Baltic nations and Poland and the military buildup that's going on there. It's where Washington is intent on installing anti-missile defense shields and giving itself an umbrella of rocket sites. Well, as recently as last month, the two countries carried out joint naval exercises in the South China Sea, and they foresee further bilateral cooperation in the military-industrial sphere. So they're kind of aligning militarily here, which is, it's alarming if you think about it. China and Russia in alliance militarily, they could pretty much do whatever they wanted to. The foundation is there for Russia and China to enter into closer and longer-term cooperation, including manned spaceflight, which would be really beneficial and efficient for both parties. They could work together on many things, and even such cooperation may be used in the framework of a military technical cooperation between the two countries. So, analysts believe that the U.S. has in fact committed its own goal by sanctioning Russia, which has led to Moscow turning east and forming a partnership with China that threatens the global hegemony of Washington. The cooperation of Russia and China now, in the period of the Ukraine crisis, is much larger than ever before, and Western sanctions against Russia, it's only enabled this cooperation to increase. The strengthening of cooperation between Russia and China and independent partner countries forms the essential basis of a new alliance in opposition to the U.S. The United States wouldn't want to fight both of these countries if they were completely, totally aligned. Now remember what I'm talking about. The original scenario we talked about was Manchuria, Mongolia, and Xinjiang. But over the last short while here, it appears that they're forming a cooperation between China and Russia, not that they're bickering over these old land masses that Russia took from China. So in light of the developments in the Ukraine and in the East, it doesn't appear, and Russia and China forming an alliance, it doesn't appear that at least at this time that there are any bones of contention between Russia and China. But we all know, if you follow the news at all, that things can change on a dime. So we'll have to keep how the alignment of these two countries develops over time. It's very, very, very important. So let me summarize real quick what we've talked about so far, because it's very important that you understand before I get into scenario number 2. And up until this point, we have speculated. In Daniel chapter 7, he's given a vision of nations that would be on the earth at the time of the second coming of Jesus Christ, when God would come back a second time and set up His kingdom here on earth. That's at the time of the second coming. Well, the Lord gives Daniel the identity of these nations symbolically through animals. He said, hey, one of these nations is going to be depicted as a lion. It's got eagle's wings. The eagle's wings are going to be broke off and made to come up from the earth and stand upon the feet as a man. And then there's going to be a bear that has 3 ribs in the mouth of it. That's symbolizing one of the nations, a 4-headed leopard, and a 10-horned beast that Daniel had never even seen a beast like that. So he just said it's a 10-horned, very angry, mean-looking beast. And so we know the lion, Great Britain. Eagle's wings, United States. The bear with the 3 ribs, Russia. And the 4-headed leopard, Germany. 10-horned beast, the revived Holy Roman Empire, the current European Union. And all of these are major players on the world stage today. So the Lord wasn't showing Daniel some insignificant nations that nobody had ever heard of. He chose the major nations on the earth today, nuclear superpowers and people that run Germany has pretty much had dominion. They've started the last 3 major wars on earth. World War I, World War II, the Franco-German War. And so the Lord chose the most prominent nations on earth and the most prominent union on earth, the Holy Roman Empire, the revived Holy Roman Empire, the current European Union, the most powerful nations on earth, and showed Daniel these symbolically of these nations, symbolized by animals in Daniel chapter 7. Well, the thing I'm talking to you about today is the 3 ribs. We're going to try to look at 2 scenarios. Who are the 3 ribs, the 3 bones of contention on the earth today? Well, the first scenario I gave was Manchuria, Mongolia, and Xinjiang. Russia originally, according to China, took those, and they shouldn't have. They had no right to those land masses, but they took them from China. So they've been bones of contention over the last many years between China and Russia. And so we thought originally, and it could still be this way, like I say, things can change like that. But we thought originally that this scenario, the bones of contention, the 3 ribs in the mouth of it, could be these 3 land masses between China and Russia. And so that's what we have. We haven't taught it as fact, but we speculated it could be this. And I'm going to get into the second scenario, which is the Baltic nations, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. I'm going to get into that scenario in the second segment of our program here, because I'm going to try to prove to you how this could be the second scenario of these three ribs in the bear's mouth, and why they're really right in the middle of what's going on over in between Europe and Russia right now. These Baltic states war could break out and Russia come right through these Baltic states, because they have been bones of contention between Russia and these Baltic states. There's bones of contention, and I actually have articles that state that they are bones of contention. Remember, the Bible says the bear had three ribs in the mouth of it. Well, I've got a couple articles that I'm going to go over with you to give you some credence to my second scenario of why it might be these Baltic nations, the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, because these articles say that these nations there's bones of contention between Russia and the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. And now it's heightened. There have been for several decades, but now it's in a heightened state. And so that's what we're going to go over in the last part, the last section. Now, if you only caught the first 30 minutes of this program on your radio station, go to endtime.com to watch the last 30 minutes. It's going to be very important, because a lot of you have heard our scenario about Manchuria, Mongolia, and Xinjiang, but I'm going to go into great detail why it could be the Baltic nations of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia in the second segment.
From Here to Armageddon, a new exciting 8-lesson series to share with your friends and family. Order yours right away.
Answering many questions like, how far are we from the Battle of Armageddon? What will happen between now and then? Where are we on the timeline? Your questions answered in this exciting 8-lesson series, From Here to Armageddon.
Go to endtime.com or call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-END-TIME, 1-800-363-8463. Order yours right away.
I know someone's praying for you can be cliche, and some might think that it's just a saying. But here at End Time Ministries, we actually are praying for you. Irvin and the End Time team begin each morning by taking your name directly to the Lord in prayer for our partners and requests submitted by each of you the previous day. The Bible tells us in Matthew 18, where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst. We may not know each of you personally, but we feel like we are very much connected because you are one of the reasons that this ministry is able to spread our message throughout the entire world. We know this can be a very difficult time for everyone. That makes you partnering with us through prayer and your giving very special. Call 1-800-END-TIME or go to endtime.com and partner with End Time today. You can help make a world impact.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archives button.
Okay, everyone. So we're talking about the two scenarios. Who could the ribs be? The three bones in the mouth of the bear mentioned in Daniel 7, verse 5. Remember, the Bible says that the second nation was likened unto a bear. It was symbolic of a nation that would be on the earth at the second coming of Jesus Christ. Well, we know it's Russia. And the Bible says it had three ribs in the mouth of it. And so we're discussing what are these three ribs? I get the question all the time. What are the three ribs? Well, I can't give you 100% yes. These are the three ribs, the Baltic states, or the countries of Manchuria, Mongolia, and Xinjiang, between bones of contention between Russia and China. But these are the two scenarios that we've come up with over doing history and research, understanding really what's going on the world stage for decades now. These are the two scenarios that we've come up with, and I wanted to explain that today. If I was going to give you one of two scenarios on the earth today, Irvin, myself, what we teach here, these would be the two scenarios that we've come up with. The first one was Manchuria, Mongolia, and Xinjiang, which Russia took from China decades ago, and they've been bones of contention ever since. And the second scenario that I'm going to go over is the Baltic states. Now, the Baltic states have been bones of contention for decades, but yet everything has kind of escalated over the past couple years, and we're going to get into that and explain to you why I wanted to bring this up today. So if you look at it, the Baltic states, bones of contention, there's three nations. Latvia, you've heard about them in the news recently. They're all over the news because NATO is doing a buildup in these nations right now, and there's a possibility of war in the near future. So the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. So let me give you a second scenario to consider when trying to figure out what the ribs are in the mouth of the bear, or Russia, in Daniel chapter 7 and verse 5. I found an article from 1914, and it's from the Literary Digest, and it published an article that was titled, "The Russo-German War Talk Stated." Now, this is 102 years ago, but it states, "It seems the bone of contention," now look at the wording there, "it seems the bone of contention between Russia and Germany is the possession of the Baltic provinces." In an article written in 1914 titled "The Baltic Territory and Pan-Germanism," the following paragraph was found. "In case of the war with Russia, it is evident that the great aim," now obviously this is right before World War I, and also obviously it was about 20, almost 30 years before World War II, about 20 some years before World War II. So it states, in case of war with Russia, which they're going to have in the future, we know that looking back, it is evident that the great aim of the object of Germany in order to strengthen her position in the East would be the conquest of the Baltic governments. Well, this was a huge bone of contention at that time between Russia and Germany. Remember, Germany was the dominant power on the world stage at that point. And so they started, remember, the last three major wars on earth. And so consequently, this was a huge article, and it says back in 1914 that the Baltic states were bones of contention between Russia and Germany. Well, now jump forward to an article I just found recently, and it said, "Battle of the Airwaves. The Baltics completes," with this, the article may be, I don't know, months old, maybe a year old, something like that, I can't remember. But it said, "Battle of the Airwaves. Baltics compete with Russia for the hearts and minds." This is from Reuters. And it said, responding to what they see as a wave of Kremlin propaganda over Ukraine, the governments of three Baltic states are keeping a wary eye on pro-Moscow TV channels and stepping up their own broadcast in Russian. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, the three Baltic states, all part of the Soviet Union until 1991, are nervous of a newly assertive Russia and fret that their large Russian-speaking minorities could be susceptible to Moscow's message. Occupied and annexed by Joseph Stalin in World War II, the Baltic states saw mass immigration by Russians in the Soviet period. Lithuania was the only one of the three to give up its ethnic Russians' automatic citizenship when the Baltics won back their independence a generation ago. In Latvia and Estonia, many ethnic Russians have what those countries call, respectively, non-citizen or alien passports, which allow them to travel but not to vote in national elections. Their status and rights have long been a bone of contention. There it is again. Their status and rights have long been a bone of contention between Moscow, because Moscow believes that they shouldn't have independence. And I'm going to go over that here in a second. Well, is it possible that the Baltic states of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia could be the three ribs in the mouth of the bear? It's my second scenario that I'm giving you today. Well, let's discuss a little history and the current conflict between Russia and the Baltics to try to understand why are the Baltics at the dead center of the conflict between Russia and NATO right now. Remember, bones of contention. Two articles that said that the Baltics are bones of contention. And the Bible says the bear had three ribs in the mouth of it. So let's look at the current bones of contention with the Baltic states. I found an article in the EU Observer that says the Baltic states ridicule Russia's probe of independence. Remember, the Baltic states used to belong to Russia, but they claimed independence. Now Russia's questioning that and saying perhaps it could have been treason and that they shouldn't have done that. And Russia still should own these nations, but now, they still should be part of Russia, but now the Baltic nations are part of NATO. And guess what? NATO has to protect them. So now you see the bones of contention now. Well, this article states in 2015, Baltic politicians ridiculed Russia's investigation. Russia just decided, hey, we're going to investigate and see if there even is anything to this independence that you say you have. So the question was whether the State Council of the USSR acted in line with the Constitution when it recognized the independence of the Baltic states in 1991. In modern times, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania declared independence in 1918, just close to the end of World War I. They were recognized by other states in the 1920s, but they were invaded and annexed by the Soviet Union in 1940, before the USSR broke up in 1991. Well, the prosecutor's inquest came after Russia invaded and annexed Crimea just 2 years ago, the Ukrainian territory, in 2014. Russia invaded, took Crimea, and then they said, well, hey, let's look at the Baltic states. They've been bones of contention for years. Let's see how their independence can hold up under investigation. Well, the same prosecutor from Russia ruled that the USSR's transfer of Crimea to Ukraine in 1954 was illegal. Well, now the Baltic states are sitting over here going, man, if they ruled that, now they're looking at us. What's going to happen here? The difference is now they're members of NATO. So now you understand the buildup over there of all this military and what's going on? Because we are bound to protect the Baltic states now. So you understand kind of all the heated situation. It's been kind of boiling, but now it's kind of almost fixing to boil over. And you're really going to see that here in a second. And it's why I wanted to talk about it today, because the Baltics, if you look at a map of the conflict going on over there, the Baltics are in the direct center of it all. Europe and NATO on this side, Russia on this side. So it's very critical that we talk about it today, because this could be the three ribs in the mouth of the bear. Bones of contention. So it states, is history repeating? Fear of history repeating has been fueled by Russian military drills rehearsing an invasion of the Baltic states. Remember, Russia invaded it in 1940 and annexed them in as part of Russia. Well, they're wondering, is history going to repeat itself? Russian bombers recently, over the last couple years, have skirted or violated Baltic airspace on numerous occasions. So they're sitting back, the Baltic states are sitting back here going, man, I understand the history of what really happened back then, and they're wondering, is history repeating itself? Is Russia really thinking about trying to invade us again? But they're sitting back with their arms folded saying, it's not going to happen because we're members of NATO now. NATO's going to protect us. So you understand, you see what's going on right now? The bones of contention, these three bones, these three nations, and why I wanted to talk about it today, because Russia and China, we thought originally these bones of contention might be Manchuria, Mongolia, and Xinjiang between Russia and China. But it seems like on the world stage right now, they're aligning currencies, they're aligning militarily, they're kind of aligning with each other. Whereas the Baltic nations, man, that's a mess. And they're really bones of contention against each other. So it's very critical that we talk about it. Now, before I get into this next break, let me just summarize what we're talking about. You understand that bones of contention, bones, 3 ribs in the mouth of the bear. The Bible says it raised up on one side, this bear, and Daniel saw a vision where the bear had 3 ribs in the mouth of it. Well, I'm giving you 2 scenarios of who we speculate could be these 3 bones of contention. The reason I'm doing this is because over the years, I have had so many people call and say, okay, we understand the lion, Great Britain. We understand the eagle's wings, United States. We understand the bear, Russia. We understand the 4-headed leopard, Germany. Got that. We understand the 10-horned beast. It's the revived Holy Roman Empire. We've taught on it. I've wrote so many articles on that and the fulfillment of that prophecy over the years. And we talked about it on our radio so many times that you guys, but the fact of the matter is that our audiences were always going on new radio programs, new television networks, and our audiences are calling me and saying, okay, I got what you guys are teaching, but what about these 3 ribs? Well, everybody that calls me, I give them these 2 scenarios. It's either got to be Manchuria, Mongolia, Xinjiang, bones of contention between Russia and China, or it's the 3 nations, the 3 Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. And it's very important. I wanted to go through some of the history. Why do we say this? Why do we think it's those 3 nations between Russia and China? Or why do we think it's the 3 nations of the Baltic states? And one of the things that led me to do this program today was because now if you go look at the Baltic states and what's going on, it's really heightened. Everything's kind of to a boiling point right now with the Baltic nations. And the Baltic states, because they're members of NATO, originally they were part of Russia. But now when Russia broke apart in 91, they declared independence. And then they've joined NATO. Well, now NATO is bound to protect them. And Russia is saying, now we're going to look into your independence to see if that was even right. So Baltic nations are sitting back here going, man, is history going to repeat itself? Are they going to invade? And I'm going to get into right here in the next segment where it could cause war, and a big war. So that's why I want to talk about it today, because it's really come to the surface and it's real important on the world stage right now.
If ever people need to hear the unvarnished truth, it is now. There are some subjects that are not politically correct to talk about, but they're urgent. That's why I'm grateful for End Time Magazine. If you're not a subscriber, you're missing information that will really impact your life. End Time has a bi-monthly magazine that explains how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. You can get a 2-year subscription for only $29. You can also get a bulk subscription and pass them out to your church. We have gotten reports that End Time Magazine has caused spiritual awakenings in churches when they see the prophecies being fulfilled right now. You can start your own ministry and leave them in doctors' offices, libraries, laundromats. You never know if you might be responsible for saving someone who is searching for the unvarnished truth. That's what the magazine did in my life. Call 1-800-363-8463. That's 1-800-END-TIME and get your subscription today.
Welcome back, everybody, and I hope you've been able to follow my train of thought today concerning the 2 scenarios. Who could the 3 ribs in the mouth of the bear be in Daniel chapter 7, verse 5? And I've told you that it could be the countries of Manchuria, Mongolia, and Xinjiang between China and Russia. You can do your own history on that, do your own research. And also, but because they're forming an alliance presently, it doesn't appear like they're real bones of contention right now as we speak. Of course, things can change. And we've also speculated over the years that it might be the Baltic nations because of the history how they broke away and they declared independence in 1991 when the Russian Federation pretty much broke down. And that it could be those nations, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. So because it has really kind of come to a boiling point right now, I wanted to talk about it today because I get questions all the time. Who are the three ribs? Because we've speculated over the years. And at this point, I can't say 100% yes, it's the Baltic nations. I can't say 100% yes, it's the three nations that Russia took from China. But we can speculate over doing all of our history and documenting these things. We can kind of come close to see who it is. And so these are the two scenarios that we've come up with. Now, the second article I found, or the third article, was from Russia, was from Newsweek, and it says Russia queries recognition of independent Baltic states. So you understand, Russia, or the Baltic states were part of Russia originally. Well, now Russia is questioning their independence, and they're kind of getting alarmed by it and wondering, is history repeating itself? So in 2015, Russia was reviewing the legality of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, the Baltics, as independent republics. The Russian Prosecutor General's office reviewed the legality of the recognition of the Baltic republics by the State Council of the USSR back in '91. Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia were occupied by the Soviet Union from 1940 until 1991 when the USSR broke up. As a result, Russia carried out a series of military drills. Now this was last year, a series of military drills, and they're still doing this, and practices in and around the region, which the Baltic states saw as increasingly aggressive. At that time, NATO allies intercepted a record number of Russian aircraft flying near to their airspace since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, which led to Russia threatening to retaliate with an adequate response if the U.S. continued with their plan to store heavy armory in Poland and Lithuania. So that kind of gives you an idea of when this thing really started heating up. Because then you have NATO and the United States and everybody coming over there, and we're kind of sitting at the edge of Russia. And we're building up armaments, so Russia starts building up armaments, and a lot of it is coming to a head now because of the Baltic nations and what's going on. Well, now jump forward to the current conflict between the members of NATO and Russia. I have an article here from the National Interest, and the title of the article is this: Why the Baltic States Are Where Nuclear War is Most Likely to Begin. Think about that. They're calling out the Baltic states, these three nations, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. And they say why this could be where a nuclear war, a major war, starts. Well, of course, we all know the Six Trumpet War that could begin, and it's the next prophesied war. It's the next prophesied event to happen on God's prophetic timeline. And we know it's supposed to start out of the Middle East region, and so we would just have to keep an eye on that. But a major war, they're saying, could start as a result of these three nations. Well, if you look at it, history may one day record that the greatest strategic blunder in history was the failure of the U.S. leaders to take the possibility of nuclear war between America and Russia seriously once the Cold War ended. Initially, U.S. leaders thought the ideological motivation for East-West nuclear tensions had disappeared with the collapse of communism. I will say the so-called collapse of communism. But even after Vladimir Putin began rebuilding Russia's military forces and signaling a desire to regain lost influence, Washington continued to treat the prospect of a nuclear conflict as a remote opportunity. Successive administrations failed to take any steps toward providing the U.S. with active defense against even a modest Russian attack. Plans to replace aging deterrent forces were repeatedly deferred until some portions of the nuclear complex had become decrepit. And Washington continued to make security commitments in Russia's near-abroad areas or countries once satellites or integral parts of the Soviet Union, as if the likelihood of nuclear conflict was close to zero. However, the possibility of nuclear war between America and Russia, it not only still exists, but it's probably growing at this point. And the place where it is most likely to begin, according to this article, is in a future military confrontation over, get this, 3 small Baltic states: Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Remember, Daniel saw a vision of a bear with 3 bones of contention in his mouth, 3 ribs. Since those nations and several other Eastern European nations joined NATO in 2004. That's a very, very key statement. The United States has been committed to defending their freedom and territorial integrity under Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty. It's very, very important. Even if Russia was to come in and try to annex them back in like he did Crimea, the United States is bound to go in and protect them. But yet we think, well, our current administration, the threat of nuclear war, very low level. Not according to Russia. Because NATO, from its inception, was aimed at containing the expansion of a nuclear country. Russia, a vital part of the U.S. security commitment to Europe, consists of Washington's willingness to use its nuclear arsenal in defense of its allies. The formal name for that strategy is extended deterrence. And since 2004, it has included the Baltic states. Now remember the history of the Baltic states. They once belonged to Russia. When the USSR deteriorated in 91, they declared their independence. Russia recognized it. But now Russia's questioning that. Over the last year, they've been questioning and researching. And so consequently, the Baltic states are members of NATO, and the United States is bound to protect them. So, simply stated, the United States seeks to deter aggression or blackmail against NATO allies from a nuclear-armed Russia by threatening to use atomic weapons. The Obama administration's 2010 Nuclear Posture Review confirmed that extended deterrence remains a pillar of U.S. global strategy. Although the credibility of the extended deterrence ultimately resides in the U.S. strategic triad of long-range bombers and missiles, the Posture Review explicitly stated that the U.S. would preserve the ability to deploy nuclear weapons with suitably equipped tactical fighters in places like Europe. So on one hand, we've got this going on. On the other hand, they'll say, the threat of nuclear war, it's just, they kind of downplay that. So I don't understand it sometimes. Well, according to Hans Christensen of the Federation of American Scientists, the U.S. currently deploys about 200 B-61 nuclear gravity bombs in Europe for use by American or Allied forces in a future East-West war. The weapons are receiving life extension modifications that will allow their use for decades to come. First on F-16 fighters and later on the stealthy F-35 fighter. Russia also deploys a sizable number of so-called non-strategic nuclear weapons in the European theater, although like the U.S., it does not disclose numbers or locations. So, while nuclear weapons could potentially be used in any number of a future war-fighting scenarios, there are multiple reasons to suspect that the greatest danger exists with regard to the 3 Baltic states. Now, I've got 8 reasons in this article. There's no way I'm going to have time to finish this. So here's what I'll do. If you email me, drobbins@endtime.com, I'll send you my notes. It's got all of this in there, and it's got 8 reasons why the Baltic states are at the very center of this conflict going on over there. And I'll send you a copy of it. I can just forward it. I'll reply back to your email, and I'll send you my notes. It's got all this in here with these articles. But the key thing before I get to the end of the program, let me try to summarize everything for you, because you understand what now some of the history, why the Baltic nations have become bones of contention between Russia and the Baltic nations, Russia and the European nations. Now NATO is bound to protect the Baltic nations. The United States, if Russia says, okay, we've done all these investigations, we don't agree with your independence, we're going to annex you back like we did Crimea, the United States is bound to go in there, because they're one of the members of NATO, to go in there and protect them. So you understand the military buildup right now. You listen to it, it's all over the news. The military buildup right now that's going on right there. And the Baltic states are right in the middle of all that. And so consequently, it's getting very heated right now. Well, the two scenarios that we've came up with over the years, after doing the research, all of the history, looking at the world stage, Russia and her allies and her enemies, what's going on, we came up with two scenarios. Who could the bones of contention be? The three ribs in the mouth of Russia. And we've speculated for years it could be either Manchuria, Mongolia, Xinjiang, who Russia took from Germany decades ago, and they've been bones of contention ever since. But now they're aligning with each other militarily, economically. They've been doing joint military ventures out in the South China Sea. And so they're kind of aligning right now. So it doesn't seem like a big, huge bone of contention between China and Russia. However, look at the Baltic nations. They originally belonged to Russia from 1940 to 1991 when the USSR disbanded. And they declared their independence. Russia recognized their independence in 91. But now in 2015, they said, hold on a second, because Vladimir Putin started building up their armaments again in Russia, and he's trying to, many say he's trying to bring Russia back to where it was. And so he's looking, in a couple years ago, I think it was in 2014, they annexed Crimea back into Russian territory. And then they swung their view over to the Baltic states and said, okay, now we're questioning your independence. The difference is the Baltic nations are NATO members now. And the United States we're obligated to go in and protect them. So now you know the two scenarios of who we speculate could be the three ribs in the mouth of the bear mentioned in Daniel chapter 7, verse 5. Only time will tell in the near future.
End of the Age is a production of End Time Ministries. This broadcast will be available on our website, endtime.com, in the archives section. On our website, you'll also find more information about how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. To reach our operators, call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. End Time Ministries is partner supported. We would like to say thank you to our partners who made this broadcast possible. To do what Matthew 24:14 said, to reach the world with the gospel of the kingdom.